things that are moonshots. You still don't want to forget about those. They could be huge, but at the end of the day, you don't want to bank your main effort on moonshots. That your success rate is drastically going to decrease. I'm actually going to be talking about something a little different. I'm going to be talking about how to get your company start up from zero, an idea, to about $1 million in ARR. This is probably, Clayton's saying hi. This is probably the hardest thing for a company, and most companies fail at this. Once you make it past there, your likelihood of success drastically increases. And before I jump in and start talking about with all these tips and tactics and what you can do, let's get a show of hands. How many people are founders here? Okay, cool. And of those people, how many of you guys are in this stage of under $1 million ARR or under $1 million annual revenue? Okay, cool. Well, still pay attention for those of you who are not, because the same principles still apply whether you are at a 0 or $1 million, what have you. How many people are marketers here? Or growth guys, growth hackers? Okay, cool. You're going to like a lot of this stuff because you can go to clients, you can go back to your own companies and execute on a lot of this stuff. Hopefully, I see some of this stuff in action this weekend. And if you do take action on this, definitely tweet at me or tweet with the Growth Marketing Conference hashtag, and I'll definitely continue that conversation. We're really interested in seeing what people implement. So before I jump in, my name is Sujan Patel. I run a growth marketing agency called Web Profits. I also have a handful of SaaS businesses under the company called Ramp Ventures. So you may have heard of them: Mailshake, Narrow, QUUU.co. I have to always spell it out because people always forget one or two U's. That's my fault for making it hard to spell. But anyways, we have a handful of SaaS companies for startups, marketing and sales professionals. Essentially, we created them for ourselves to make our jobs a little easier, found out a lot of our friends wanted them, and kind of scaled from there. Before I jump into all these tactics and things that you can execute, I want to discuss a few rules that I live by, a few rules that if you practice is going to make your job a lot easier and a lot less confusing. First and foremost, let's simplify things. Most companies, such as Dropbox, Airbnb, these large companies who've made it to the billions of dollars, they don't have dozens of channels of growth. They have a handful. So instead of trying to go after every tactic, every nook and cranny to kind of leverage, focus on 3 channels. If you focus on 3, 1, it's a lot more manageable, achievable. You can be great at them. And take it one step further and actually focus on 1 channel at a time. Get good, get it working, make it feel easy. And once it feels easy, you can then focus on the next one and the next one and the next one. You might be able to do more than 3. But at the end of the day, if you simplify this to your 3 biggest channels, 1, you're going to be working on things that can scale, because some of these channels just don't scale that big. Some of them, other ones do. So it's all up to you at the end of the day. But the next thing here is focusing on your funnel and its weaknesses. So everybody has a funnel, whether you are hot new startup, mobile app, it doesn't matter what you do. Even if you're an old school business, services, what have you, everybody has a funnel. Starts with awareness. Somewhere along the way, somebody purchases if you're good enough. And hopefully, you treat your customers well and they're loyal. And you have some great communications and support, maybe a great blog that people love. And you have advocates such as Buffer, or such as Buffer does. But generally speaking, there are 2 big weaknesses I see in every single business. The first one is awareness. Simply don't have enough traffic. People don't know who you are. This is a big problem because if you don't have this, nothing else you do matters. You could have the best conversion rate in the world, but if not enough people come to your website, it's irrelevant. And frankly, when you do get more people to come to your website, whatever you've done to optimize will be irrelevant as well. The other thing is conversion. People do get traffic. Maybe you're getting unqualified traffic, but you're failing to convert people. So what I recommend here is really pay attention to these numbers, these 2 areas, and keep an eye on them because these are the areas where you're going to find the biggest weaknesses and also the biggest opportunities. I like to use the bullseye framework from the book Traction. And these guys did a great job of really simplifying my 3 channels kind of approach. The way this bullseye framework is organized is essentially that the center ring is really focusing on those 3 channels. The middle ring is focusing on ancillary channels, and the outer ring is all around ancillary channels, things that are moonshots. You still don't want to forget about those. They could be huge, but at the end of the day, you don't want to bank your main effort on moonshots. That your success rate is drastically going to decrease. The next thing is, and this is my last rule, I promise, before I jump into the tactics, is focusing on making your customers love you and a great user experience and everything around your brand, your product, and exposure and experience with your brand instead of focusing on PR. Because if you do this, it will be much, much more beneficial. It will help you grow much, much faster than a TechCrunch article or whatever, the Next Web article or what have you. Because even though a Next Web article maybe get you a big jolt of traffic, what happens when it fades away 1 week later? You're not going to continue to get that same jolt. So you may need it, but my approach is screw PR and focus on getting your customers to absolutely love you. And when you do this, you can move mountains. So the agenda for today is talking about, first and foremost, pre-launch marketing. Second, how to nail your launch. Very, very important here. You get this thing right, the cards can kind of fall into place. And lastly, once you got a few hundred customers, maybe a dozen customers to a few hundred depending on your price point, you have some momentum, you're ready for scalable marketing, or I like to call it big boy marketing. So I'm not just talking out of my ass here. I actually do this for myself and have leveraged this exact approach I'm going to share with you for 2 different companies. One is my own, Mailshake. We got to about 7,500 customers using this exact approach. And again, our 3 channels here are content marketing, influencer marketing, and community. What I mean by community is once somebody becomes a customer, we do a lot of work to engage with them to keep them a part of our brand. We have a private Facebook group and whatnot. And another company called wheniwork.com, where we grew to 15,000 customers, about 10 million ARR, using the same things. Slightly different channels. You can see customer advocacy is a huge part of our growth. What I mean by that is word of mouth. Our customers are driving the business. And it's partly due to the product, another part of due to how we interact with them. We do a lot of engagement with them on social media, offline, send them books, more content, what have you. So let's jump into it. First and foremost, start with the landing page. I don't care if your product's already out, you're going to release a new feature, create a landing page for that feature. If you have an idea, you don't even have a full-fledged idea, create a landing page. It becomes real when you create that landing page. It also, that's when day one starts. That's when you can start getting feedback. You can put a big, bad, bold mission statement, but what I want you to really do is collect email addresses. And this is important because as you grow this email list, they can help you when you launch and do other things. And frankly, if you are failing to collect email addresses and people don't resonate with your idea, this is a time you can change either your messaging or maybe your idea doesn't have legs, so you can save yourself a lot of time and hard work. The next, building your email list is still a big part of this, is building an audience. What I like to do and what I recommend heavily is to actually start with an ebook or a lead magnet, some sort of big, explosive thing that you can then do lots of different marketing around. Before I launched Mailshake and a handful of my other SaaS products back in 2015 in the summer, 6 months prior, I wrote a book and published it on growth hacking called 100 Days of Growth. I used that to actually build my audience, build my list, and I knew I was going to be building a tool for marketers. And so I found a good angle. At the time, growth hacking was a lot less saturated, and there was enough traction. If I looked on Google Trends and things like that, there were people searching for it, and the volume was going up. So I figured, why not do that and kind of adjust the approach? That way I can build a big audience. You can do the same thing. When you create a value piece of content, you can actually do a lot more outbound and kind of cold emails, which I'll get into in a second. But along the way, you can use the ebook to kind of start blogging and create kind of themes around that. So again, on your landing page, create a blog, Also, guest posts on industry publications, the larger the better, but start your way up from the bottom. Why I like other blogs and guest blogging instead of building your own blog and focusing on that is because you're going where an audience is. If it's your blog, you actually have to start from scratch, right? Yeah, you get 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, great. But if you go and blog on another person's site, figure out your industry, find the top blogs, but when you do that, you're going to a place where there's a big audience already, and you can leverage and bring it back to your site. And if you have that landing page and the ebook, people will purchase, people will download, you get email addresses, you'll start building that audience. One hack I like to use is actually leverage influencers. And the best way to leverage influencers is to interview them. One, it helps you build a relationship. And two, they have a brand, they have a following, people know who they are. They're reputable. They are kind of unofficially endorsing you by putting your brand, your company closer to their brand. But you can also attract an audience as well. Another thing I recommend doing is smart cold emails. Similar to cold emails, you're reaching out to people, but instead of just reaching out, try to make that email warm. What I like to do is identify the customer, who am I going after and whatnot. Let's just say you figure that out. Get their attention. Getting their attention on social media, following them, adding them on LinkedIn, even viewing their LinkedIn profile, if you're in the B2B space, can actually increase your success rate, your response rate, your open rates drastically. That one thing alone can make or break your cold email campaign. Because if somebody sees your name in your inbox and they've seen it on a social media profile and it's within the 24-hour period, 48-hour period, they may remember and it may not be cold. I like to use things like Hunter or Find Any email addresses to find these email addresses to begin with. I start usually with cold email when I have a new product and idea because I can control it. I can do 1,000 emails, send in my ebook and something like that to get early feedback, early kind of traction, and I can turn it off. If it's bad, if I have a lot of feedback and people are saying, hey, I don't like it, I don't think I'll buy from you, or they're just saying, I see this idea everywhere or whatnot, I can adjust it, I can turn off my marketing and go back to the drawing board. And one last thing here is to use something like retarget links or Rebrandly, where you can actually add retargeting pixel to a link. So if you're sending a cold email and you're sending an external article, or an article that's not written by you, or even if it's your own, you can at least retarget them on social media or on Facebook with other places. Speaking of social media, instead of doing your A/B testing on your own site, because early stage companies, again, they have that awareness issue, do your A/B testing on Facebook. You can use the click-through rate to determine the success. And let's just say you have a handful of ideas, different messaging you want to try out. Well, take those handful and turn it into true proven ones, the best click-through rate, and then you can A/B test on your website. Because if you're getting a few thousand visitors a month, you probably don't have enough traffic to get statistical significance for a few months. And let's face it, who wants to do A/B tests at an early stage company for 3 months just to figure out what the right messaging is when you can do it on Facebook in 24 hours and for a few bucks because you're really just measuring click-through rate. Now let's talk about launch marketing. You've built up an audience, you have your ebook, you've been doing some cold email, hopefully you've been getting good feedback, you're ready to essentially get out there and talk about your product more publicly. So here's the 6 launch tips I recommend. First and foremost, use Product Hunt. Get on Product Hunt. This is the new TechCrunch, this is the new PR in my opinion. It also gets you credibility just as TechCrunch would 10 years ago. It's not as hard to get. The one thing here is that if you can't get on TechCrunch, it means you got to go back to the drawing board. The easiest way I recommend to do this is start befriending those influencers. Again, those influencers that hopefully you interviewed earlier, you built relationships with during your pre-launch phase, one of them has to have a Product Hunt account that can submit stuff. And so look through who does. In fact, when you go to the influencer stage and you're interviewing them, definitely let them know that you're going to launch soon and ask them for that favor during that interview process so that way you can kind of plan it. You're on Product Hunt, let's say you make it, email your list. Hopefully you've built a few hundred, a few thousand, hopefully even more, but email them. Even if it's a few hundred, it could still help you get votes, get traction, and get their word out. This is the time to pitch the journalist. At the end of the day, when you launch, is when people care. That's the one time it's okay to pitch PR and actually get results from it. You have to have a unique angle, and I can go on forever on how to pitch PR. I have a lot of blog posts on sujanpatel.com on how to do PR pitches, but essentially keep it short, sweet, make the value add about them, and link to the product hunt listing so they can see that you actually are a real company, you have some validation and whatnot. Email your friends and family. Get those upvotes. Get everybody talking about it. Send more cold emails about the fact that you're launching, right? So save some of those cold emails at this point. And lastly, anyone who comes to your website, retarget them and send them more demo and more ebook ads on Facebook specifically. I like this because now you're doing, one is the demo ads are sales driven and the other ones are value add content, because let's just face it, if you get an ad on an ebook, you ignore it. If you get a sales ad, you might not be happy about it, whatnot. But nobody cares if you're sending out value. No one gets annoyed about giving too much value out. And at the end of the day, timing is very, very critical, because everything you've done on the audience building side and on the launch is all compounding. So the better you get your timing, if you get everything kind of teed up in that 24 hours or in that 1 week launch window, the better results you're gonna get. And again, your friends and family will support you. You have to just ask them. It's a small little win. I'm not going to move mountains, but every little bit helps. This is a screenshot here of I bought a company called Pick.co last year. Actually was a big fan of it. Company went under, so I picked it up because I just wanted to continue using it. But I just posted a Facebook message, and a lot of my aunts and uncles and friends and random people actually found it. And we got a couple dozen customers from it. But it does work. All right, so you've had a good launch. You've built up your audience. You have an ebook now that's getting email opt-ins. You're ready for some prime time launching. First and foremost, and this is more of a framework than it is a tactic here, but do the math. And do the math on your genius ideas. And I'm going to share with you the framework I use at all my startups. It's a simple spreadsheet. But what I mean by do the math is, let's just say you have this idea of like, hey, I'm going to do some co-marketing or co-promotion. I've got a friend or a company that's willing to email their list. They have a 2 million person list. Well, if you do the math, a 2 million person list, okay, let's just say the open rate is 30%. 30% of 2 million people, a lot smaller, right? Now, the click-through rate of 30% is going to be, let's say, great numbers, 10%, which is usually kind of high or really high, but let's say you got 10%. Then they come to your website, and what are you going to ask them to do? Maybe join your webinar, maybe it's a sales demo, or maybe it's a conversion. Either way, the numbers get smaller and smaller. And at the end of the day, if you do the math on how many estimated webinar signups you're going to get from a 2 million person email list, I guarantee you it's going to be a lot smaller than you think. And what I mean by this is that it just means you got to focus on those bigger ideas. And you got to go back to those 3 channels and make sure you focus on those right ones. Too many people get stuck in this and don't do the math on their genius ideas. They spend a lot of time and they look back 3 months and they realize, oh, this idea I had only is going to generate 10 customers. So here's that framework I was talking about. I use this Google spreadsheet, and you can use it here. It's available for download for free, but essentially it's 3 tabs. I have my ideas, I have my on deck, the things I'm working on, and I have my KPIs. So this is the ideas tab. This is all of my ideas. Those ideas I come up with when I'm in the shower, when I'm having beers with my friends, those things I think they're great, but I don't really care if they're not. And these are the things maybe my customers tell me, my employees, what have you. I put them all down. Then, sometime later, usually for me, every Monday, I do weekly sprints, but you can do monthly, whatever interval that's not the same day, because you want to sleep on that. You want to take your idea that you had yesterday, sleep on it for a few days, and then when you're actually ready to implement, add a metric. What is this? What's the predictive? Add some prediction or estimate of what this is going to do for you. Put a metric down, because when you put the metric down, it solidifies how much effort you should put into it. And when you actually add metrics to all your genius ideas, quote unquote genius ideas, you're going to realize how many of them actually can move the needle. And naturally, nobody here wants to waste time. Nobody naturally wants to waste time. They're going to do the things that move the results, move the mountains, that are going to actually drive the most customers. So naturally, you're going to find the ones at the top are going to float to the top with the highest impact. And keep KPIs on that same document, meaning if you care about customers and users or visitors or email opt-ins or whatever it is, active customers, active users, whatever, put them down and measure against that KPI. So for me, this is an example of Narrow.io, one of our companies. I care about visitors. I care about my visitor trial conversion rate. I care about the number of trials I get per month. I care about the number of new customers and the visitor and the trial to customer conversion rate. And lastly, I care about my churn rate. Obviously, revenue is an impact of all the other numbers, but if these numbers look off and all of my on deck of the things I'm working on, let's just say my churn is high 1 month or 2 months or 3 months in a row, and I'm focusing all on top of the funnel on the on deck, then I'm doing something wrong. I'm not doing what's best for my business. So this drives this and this. So it's kind of working backwards for my KPIs. All right, so let's say you've done this. You come up with your ideas. One of the things I found is when you actually come up with these ideas, make sure that you don't implement them at the same time, because there's two different parts of your brain. There's the creative side who is like, oh my God, I can do this cool PR thing. I have this great idea. It's going to do well. And then you have your logic side who's like, well, let's do the math on that. So they don't work well together, at least not at the same time. So split them up. That's why I like to sleep on it. That's the very simple reason I like to sleep on it. And remember, it's okay for those bad ideas. I call them bad because they usually are, but those crazy ideas to kind of sneak through and just devote enough time to them, because every CEO, every company has kind of those ideas. So it's good to let them go through, but don't spend all your time on them. All right, so I'm going to go through fast on these ones because there's a lot. I want to leave some time for Q&A, and there's a lot to cover. So concierge onboarding. If you're a new company, definitely try this. If you're in the SaaS space, what essentially this is dragging your customers through the finish line, giving them an experience via a phone or just some sort of personalized approach, because your software is not going to convert the best way possible off the bat. So you use this to figure out what the weaknesses are, what people are responding to positively, and then essentially you can implement that into your software. And when you get customers, treat them right. Buffer is one of my favorite examples of a company who does a good job at thanking their customers. Every single invoice they send over, it says thank you. And it's a picture of their team, what they're up to and whatnot. So it makes me feel like I connect with them even though I don't know them at all. Drift is another good company, but you can thank your customers. In fact, if you're only doing an online service or software, I recommend using handwritten thank you cards and mailing it to them. Why I like mail? Because they're not expecting it. They're usually surprised. And if you're too lazy to write your own handwritten thank you cards, or you have bad handwriting like myself, you can use a service like MailLift. They charge a few bucks per actual per card, but it's really easy. It's actually handwritten. And here's an example of Drift thanking me on social media. So I signed up for a Drift a few months ago, and they tweeted at me. And they have a whole account just tweeting at new customers. Not a huge deal. Didn't take that long, but a simple thing actually got me through the finish line. And you'd be surprised how little you need to do to actually get people to the finish line. It's making, usually when you're in a SaaS business, people are super excited up front, and then they realize, oh, I have to do some work. I'm going to go busy. I got a meeting. Well, if you tweet at them, they may come back and actually activate, which is one of the biggest things, hardest things for a SaaS business. All right, a couple more things here is asking your customers for help, right? You get feedback. A lot of people are afraid about this, and you're going to hear a great talk later today from Nikki on feedback and how do you leverage that. But it's very, very important. The other thing you can do before you go crazy with the referral program, implementing word of mouth or bloated software, ask your customers to spread the word. Ask your customers for a testimonial. They will do this. And if they don't spread the word, first, make it easy for them. Make it one click or whatnot. If they don't spread the word, no software is going to solve that for you. If an email can't get through to them, a bloated software or like a process is not going to work. So get it working there. All right, a couple tactics or hacks you can use. First, the NPS survey. If you want to get a lot of testimonials, I like to use the NPS survey. Essentially what you're doing is asking somebody a 0 to 10 scale how likely they would to recommend you to a friend or a family member or colleague. And the 9s and 10s, those are promoters. they were likely already promoting you. So you email them back, and you can actually just ask them, hey, mind reviewing us here, or giving us a testimonial, and they will do it because they probably already are promoting you. Secondary SEO. We all know SEO takes forever these days, so I recommend using a hack. Secondary SEO, essentially finding blogs or Quora or third-party sites that you can essentially write on or post to try to rank. And what you can do is feel out that keyword, and if it drives some traffic, you should focus on it as a primary driver. Here's an example of me answering a Quora question. Actually, it's one of my employees at the time answering that question. That drove us about 10 new customers from that one Quora post. Another thing is live chat. There's multiple ways to do this, but you can drive leads from live chat. The simple way to think about this is look at your conversion rate, the average time it takes somebody to convert, add 5 seconds, and prompt live chat. Go to your pricing page, wait 10 seconds, and prompt live chat. And those two places are great places to start. All right, remember, there's only 5 real channels for growth. There's SEO, content marketing kind of fits in there as well, organic traffic, paid acquisition. There's the virality, word of mouth, kind of referrals, your customers essentially. Maybe that comes from your product. Sales, right? That always has worked traditionally. It's hundreds of years old, if not more. And other. Well, what is other? Other is not scalable. Other is this situational unicorn type thing that very rarely works. And don't bank on that. These are your outer channels in that bullseye framework. Thank you guys, and we have some time for Q&A, correct? Awesome.